I'm sure by now most of you are already aware of how much of a disappointment Persona 3 Portable's re-release is. If you're not, well, I suggest you watch the video that I made on it where I basically go over all of that port's shortcomings. But if you don't want to, the TLDR of that video is that Atlus just lazily upscaled and ported Persona 3 Portable with very few enhancements. Like, there's no skill selection in Fusion, and they didn't bring back any of the features that were cut from FES. And they also tried to improve the game by using AI upscalers on the backgrounds, and that didn't work so well. And before anyone leaves a comment telling me that it's not a remaster, it's just a port, if you look at the descriptions for this game on their store pages, they clearly say that the graphics have been remastered. I'm not going to harp on this port for its flaws too much in this video, because, well, I already did that, but also because I want to be a little more constructive. Atlus's decision to just port Portable was already controversial because there is a good chunk of the fanbase that thinks the PS2 versions are better. And while I don't agree, I do think there are a lot of advantages those versions have over Portable. This is the main reason so many people have been asking for a remake of Persona 3, so that fans no longer have to be torn between these two versions, and so that there can be a version that combines the best aspects of both. Now, do I think Persona 3 needs a remake? Well, it depends on your definition. If we're talking a game made from the ground up for modern hardware that recreates Persona 3, then the answer would be no. Would it be cool? Absolutely. But if Atlus is going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and several years working on a brand new game, I'd much rather than be working on the next game in the Persona series, like, you know, Persona 6, which hopefully they are working on. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know what to think. Did you know that Persona 5 is now older than Eternal Punishment was when Persona 3 came out? Yeah, let that sink in. But getting back on topic, while I don't think Persona 3 needs a from-the-ground-up remake, I do think it needs an enhanced port, a definitive edition, if you will, that combines the best content of both FES and Portable. I don't know if this counts as a remake or not. Like I said, when I think remake, I think a game being remade from the ground up like Final Fantasy VII or Resident Evil 2. But either way, a definitive edition is what I was hoping they would do, but instead Atlus just took the easy route and just ported Portable to modern platforms while continuing to ignore the benefits of FES. Now, will Atlus go the extra mile and release a definitive edition of Persona 3? Probably not. The rumors of a Persona 3 remake are still persisting, but they're just that, rumors. I mean, this isn't Persona 2. Spreading a rumor around won't make it come true. They already pulled the trigger and released this version of Portable, and a definitive edition would probably cannibalize the sales. And even if they pulled this version from digital storefronts, it could be seen as a very anti-consumer move from people who already bought the game. Then again, they did release FES on the PS3 store not long after Portable came out, same with Vanilla Persona 4 after Golden, so maybe they could either give out a free code to everyone who already bought this version, seeing as how it is digital only, or charge them a small fee to upgrade to the definitive edition or something like that. But what's important for this video is what they would include in the game itself and how they would go about it. This is what I want from a Persona 3 remake or definitive edition or Sapphire edition or whatever you think they're going to call it. But first, a word from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by Affogato. Now, what is Affogato? Well, it's a brand new RPG from developer B-Fun Studio that combines restaurant management and bartending with real-time strategy gameplay. Half the game has you managing your coffee shop, talking to customers, learning about their backstories, and the other half has you quite literally helping them fight their inner demons. You take on the role of, well, Affogato, who is a sorceress who has the ability to tap into people's minds and cleanse them of the demons that are corrupting them. The gameplay is a lot like a tower defense game, except instead of trying to defend your base against incoming enemies, here, you're the one attacking. You summon different characters with different abilities to the battlefield, and you have to guide them through the dungeon while fighting and protecting them from enemies along the way. It's quite engaging and very challenging. Anyone seeking an RPG that will really force you to strategize and think about your every move will not be disappointed with Affogato. On top of all that, Affogato has a beautiful art style and an electrifying jazz soundtrack that will be stuck in your head even when you're not playing. This game is scheduled to release later this year, but right now, the demo can be played as part of the February 2023 Steam Next Fest. Check out Affogato right now using the link down below in the description. Like I said, you can play the demo right now for free, and if you like it, why not add it to your wish list? I want to give a big thanks to Affogato for sponsoring this video, and now, let's get back to the video. Let's start by going over features that should be brought back from FES, like the 3D overworld. This one pretty much speaks for itself. I mean, it's completely understandable why it was cut from the PSP version of Persona 3, but that was 2 generations ago, and on a handheld console. Though, if I'm being perfectly honest, part of me actually kind of prefers the point-and-click style of Portable because it's easier and faster to get around, but at the same time, I also feel it takes away from a lot of the immersion. Plus, there's always the option to just instantly go to parts of the overworld using the square button. Either way, there's no doubt in my mind that including the 3D overworld wouldn't be an issue for the PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Series X, or even the Switch, especially seeing as how those consoles can run Golden and Royal just fine. The assets for Persona 3's 3D overworld already exist in FES, so they don't really have to go out of their way to remake them all. They could easily just polish them up, make them crispier and shinier for modern hardware, and then leave it at that. Well, aside from the new areas that they added in Portable, which there weren't a whole lot of anyway, and they could probably just get away with making them out of already existing assets from that game. That also goes for the new characters, which, again, there aren't a whole lot of. New Social Link characters that were introduced in Portable, like Rio, Saori, and Theodore, don't have models, but I don't imagine that making low-poly PS2 style models for them would be that hard. Now, I don't have any experience with programming or animating or 3D modeling or anything like that, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but based on the limited knowledge I do have, I am making the freak assumption that it wouldn't be too hard. Either way, there's only like 2 or 3 new characters introduced in Portable, not counting FemC, who already has a 3D model anyway, so yeah. Now, the next and probably most important feature that I want to see return is the answer. The community has a lot of mixed opinions on the answer. A lot of people say that it's a slog to play through. A lot of people say it ruins the story of Persona 3 along with its ending. A lot of people say it's too hard. And while I understand some of the issues that people have, I actually think the answer is a good addition to Persona 3 and a pretty underrated mode. It ties up some of the loose ends that were left in the base game, and I think the added roguelike elements are a lot of fun. Maybe that's just because I'm one of those weirdos who actually likes the gameplay and dungeon crawling of Persona 3, but if you are one of those Persona 3 fans that think the answer is just tedious and unnecessary, just keep this in mind. You don't have to play it. I've heard that one of the reasons the answer was cut from Portable was because it was made with the male protagonist's story in mind, and people who played it after playing as the female would be confused, but like, if that's such a problem, just include a message at the beginning that says, the answer was written before the FemC was added, or something like that. I mean, I would say maybe they could just bring back the voice actors to record a few more lines, but that would probably cost more than it would be worth. Not to mention, they'd also have to rewrite a lot of the lines too. I'd say just leave it as is, but make it clear that it follows the male protagonist story, not the female's. I'm sure people who only played as the female would be able to figure out what's going on regardless. The next thing I want to see return is the anime cutscenes. These cutscenes were pretty well done, and yeah, there's really not a lot to say. I like them, and I want to see them return. Once again, I heard that the reason they were removed from Portable was because they would have had to edit in the female protagonist over the male for ones he's in, but I mean, and again, I'm not a movie editor. I edit videos for YouTube, obviously, but if it's too much work to add her, just keep them in for only the male protagonist, or only show parts that he's not in, or something like that. Those are the biggest features I want to see brought back, but there are a handful of smaller ones too, like having the protagonist be able to use any weapon in the game aside from Aigis' guns. Like, why was this changed in Portable? My only guess is that they either didn't want to program animations for all the weapons for the FemC, or they made this change because in Persona 4 you could only use two-handed swords, and the developers of Portable were probably like, crap, we gotta go back and fix that, or something. I don't know, I probably wouldn't be complaining about this had this been the case in the original, but letting you use different weapon types in FES, but then limiting you to just one type in Portable just feels like a big kick in the Mara. Plus, being able to use multiple weapon types kind of makes sense in the context of the game, with the protagonist being a wild card and having access to different personas and different moves and fighting styles and whatnot, so why shouldn't this apply to his arsenal too? Heck, I'd even go the extra mile and make it so that the male protagonist can use Naginatas and so that both can use Aigis' guns. Why? Because allowing you to use a gun would be cool, but also because, I mean, does it really make sense for Police Station to be carrying weapons that are only usable by this one-of-a-kind sentient humanoid combat robot that was made almost a decade ago? Also, loosen the restrictions on skills that are passable through fusion. In FES, pretty much any skill that was learned by just one persona could still be passed on through fusion. Some examples being Heaven's Blade, Prolaya, Maralagidyne, Black Viper, Morningstar, Die For Me. You get the idea. These could be passed on to other personas through fusion, but in Portable, they made it so that pretty much the only exclusive skills that were passable were the severe elemental skills, Samsara, and probably a few others that I can't name off the top of my head. Then, in Persona 4, they made it even worse, where not even those could be passed on. I get that this is something that Mainline does too, and I get that they want these personas to have special abilities and not just be fusion fodder after 5 or so levels, but I already went through a ton of effort to get these personas and grind them up to learn these skills. I'd like to keep them throughout the game as much as I can. Not to mention, some of them actually have skill cards, like Prolaya and Maralagidyne. Okay, so you're telling me you don't want these skills passed down through fusion, but you're okay giving me a skill card that I can infinitely duplicate? While you're at it, why not make Maralagidyne actually powerful like it was in FES, not just barely stronger than Agidyne like you made it in Portable? Well, that's about it for returning features from FES. Let's move on to features introduced in Portable that I'd like to see kept. First of all, the female protagonist. I mean, of course, why wouldn't they bring her back? It's the biggest addition that defined Persona 3 Portable, and one of the reasons many fans think Portable is better. Not only did it add new social links, but it also included new music and a different UI style. It was almost like playing an entirely different game, and now with this version, you'll be able to walk around as her in the 3D explorable environments. What's not cool about that? Up next are the changes made to the combat, which I think are really what makes Portable stand out. I won't go super into detail, but vanilla P3 and FES had a lot of issues with their gameplay that wouldn't be fixed until Portable. For one thing, you couldn't control your party members, and while you could give them instructions through the tactics menu, their AI still wasn't always the smartest, and the tactics got reset after every battle anyway. There's also the whole meme of Mitsuru spamming Marin Karin instead of healing, and really, just having to rely on the shoddy AI is not ideal. But controllable party members is not the only improvement Portable made. In FES, when you were knocked down, you'd have to take a turn getting back up, which made it possible to infinitely lock the enemy into this cycle of getting knocked down, then wasting a turn getting back up. There are videos on YouTube of people exploiting this and doing some crazy crap that you really shouldn't be able to. Portable fixed this by making it so that attacking a downed enemy with a weak attack would make them dizzy and lose one turn, but enemies can still get back up and attack the same turn, and obviously this applies to you as well. They also made it so that you can no longer get tired while in Tartarus, you're not automatically healed when returning to the lobby, you no longer have to talk to characters to change their equipment, they added skill cards, added the beginner and maniac difficulty modes, they replaced wait with the defend command, added co-op attacks, sometimes allies will take a fatal blow for the protagonist, and just all of these I think are good additions. The only change I don't really like is how they made fusion spells just items. Like, why? You don't even need the two personas. I get that they didn't want these attacks to just be endlessly spammable, but why make them items? If they were going to change this again, I'd say maybe make it so that you need items to execute fusion spells, but make it so that you can use them to do any fusion spell, provided you have the right personas. I don't know, I hardly ever use fusion spells in both versions of P3, so it's not too much of a loss regardless of whatever style they decide to go with, but yeah. Also, I know a lot of people don't like Tartarus. I personally don't have much of an issue with it, but I can understand where the complaints come from. It does get repetitive hearing similar music and seeing the same looking floors over and over again. I don't think they need to get rid of Tartarus, but add more differences between the different blocks of Tartarus to break up the repetition. There are also a few story changes they made, albeit small ones, but the biggest one is the ability to save Shinjiro as the FEMC and choose who you spend the last moments of the game with. Of course, this is only in New Game Plus, so just make it so that you don't need to be in New Game Plus to do this. I mean, that was a stupid idea. Whoever's idea that was should be demoted. So that's it for existing features in these games, but now I want to end the video by talking about some new features that aren't in either game that I'd like to see. First of all, allow me to select which skills pass on to personas through fusion. I mean, I can't believe this is a point I have to make in this video, but apparently the guys making the existing remaster of Persona 3 didn't get the memo, and skill inheritance is still completely random. Fix this crap now. I don't care if you patch it in, but this needs to be in the game. especially in this theoretical definitive edition that I'm talking about right now. Second of all, I'd like them to make it so that costumes and armor are separate. Yeah, in Persona 3, rather than having armor which affected your defenses and costumes which affected your appearances like in Persona 4 and 5, in 3 they just made it so that most armor pieces didn't change your appearance, but there were a few that did, like the winter and summer uniforms, the tuxedos, the Santa suits, the high-cut armor, the swimsuits, but pretty much everything else just defaulted back to your regular school uniform. It meant that you couldn't really look the way you wanted throughout the majority of the game, because usually these outfits had inferior stats compared to the generic armor pieces. I'd say just make all of the existing appearance-changing outfits into costumes, and on the armor side, replace their names with whatever sounds appropriate. I mean, it's not like you're going to be seeing them, the only thing that will be changing are the names. In fact, while you're at it, throw some more costumes in there, like maybe some that are references to Persona 1, 2, 4, and 5, and maybe some mainline games too. Speaking of new content, how about some new Personas? I mean, maybe not brand new ones, because then they'd have to make those models from the ground up, but maybe bring back some demons from other PS2 era Megaten games that didn't make it into Persona 3, like Alciel, Baphomet, Matador. Better yet, how about adding some of the big bosses that weren't summonable from those games, like Ahriman? That would be cool. Just as long as Atlus doesn't use this as an excuse to nickel and dime everyone with overpriced DLC. I can also definitely see them adding some new social links. I always found it kind of disappointing that Junpei and Akihiko didn't have social links as the male protagonist. I mean, they'd have to add some more arcanas, but I can still see it working. They'd also have to add some additional voice lines, but honestly, most of the dialogue in the social links isn't voiced anyway, so I don't think it would be too much of an issue if there wasn't any voice dialogue for these new social links. Also, Persona 4 Golden added this really cool feature where you could watch bonus content as TV listings, and some of the stuff on here were recordings of real-life Persona concerts. I mean, how cool is that? Now, imagine if Persona 3 had something like this, which not only included concerts, but also Megaten-related movies and TV shows, like maybe Trinity Soul or the Persona 3 movies. I mean, this would make absolutely zero sense in the context of the game, and it's also probably asking way too much from Atlus because of legal fees and crap, but it'd be really awesome if they did add it, and it's not like we haven't seen this done in games before. High on Life has like 4 different horror movies you can watch in their entirety. Granted, most of them suck, but it's still a nice feature. And in the darkness, you can watch the entirety of To Kill a Mockingbird, The Man with the Golden Arm, The Street Fighter, the 1974 Japanese movie, and a full episode of Flash Gordon. And you can watch them while cuddling with your girlfriend. Imagine watching episodes of Persona Trinity Soul while cuddling with Aigis or Yukari. That would be the cutest thing ever. In fact, if we're talking about like entire things as bonus content, another cool feature would be if they made some of the Persona spin-offs on mobile phones or browser games playable in-game, like Aegis the First Mission or Persona 3 Social. Now, this is assuming Atlus even has access to the original files for these games, but again, we've seen similar things done in games before. In Sonic Adventure DX for the GameCube, you could unlock Game Gear Sonic games by completing missions, and in fact, this was how we got the first English release of Tails Sky Patrol. I'm pretty much just fantasizing about features we'll probably never get at this point, and this is also probably a good time to end the video. But let me know what you guys think. Do you agree or disagree? What do you all want from a Persona 3 Definitive Edition? Be sure to check out my other links in the description. If you want to support me, consider leaving a coffee donation. It'll get you featured in the credits of my next video. And until then, I will see you all later.